All right. Okay, so what we're going to do today is some hopefully debunking, at least in your minds when you come away from the video. I've seen them many times. Certain times of the year, they're more prevalent on the internet, at least. But they are claims that Christianity is like plagiarized from pagan sources. So you may have heard this, for example, about the dates of Christmas and certain aspects of Christmas celebrations, etc. We're not going to focus on those. We're going to look at myths, pre-Christ mythology, and claimed similarities that would, if one didn't look at the actual information, you could be forgiven for being mistaken and believing that aspects of Christianity were merely like lifted or purloined from these other dudes. I'm going to go with dudes. So I'll be able to see the live chat. I won't. Oh, what I will do is make my phone a little bit quieter and show you all like a massive finger, as it were. That sounds wrong. Let's just get on with it because I've already gone off way off. Okay, so the claim is that gospel writers borrowed from mythology. That's the sound bite. So in order to discover the truth, whether there is any truth to this claim or the truth behind the claim, we need to, hello everyone, like in advance, we need to look at like 4 different areas, I guess. We need to look at the history, the actual history or mythological history, the recorded facts surrounding the preceding pagan narratives and assess their veracity. We need to, so those are the claims. We need to look at the actual portrayals in comparison to Christ. We need to look for and expose any logical fallacies along the way that are being made by the claimants, as it were. And we need to look at why the New Testament Gospels are trustworthy depictions of the historical and true Jesus Christ, because, of course, there are false Christs bouncing around in other religions, as it were. So the claim that Jesus was a myth or an exaggerated portrayal, or an exaggeration, actually, or mimicry of these preceding pagan deities / figures, came around in the 1800s. They originated in German theologians of the time, liberal German theologians, 1800s. So in a nutshell, what they said was that Jesus was nothing more than a copy of fertility gods, the dying and the rising again, etc., from various geological and chronological places, if that makes sense, like along the timeline, always preceding Christ, obviously, for the claim of plagiarism, and in various different cultures and locations. So Tammuz in Mesopotamia, Adonis in Syria, Attis in Asia Minor, and Horus in Egypt, off the top of my head. Off the top of the page, but I mean, there are more that just popped into mind, but let's stick with those. Yeah, there are more, actually. Mithras. Okay, anyway. The fact is that none of the claims, none of the books containing the theories, the pseudo-intellectualized or theologized theories were taken serious at the time. Academics of the day didn't rush around, attacking the claims because they didn't take them seriously. That's something that's, it's relatively important. Obviously, new technologies and new means of assessing situations comes up, but at the time, at least, it wasn't a big deal, as it were. The assertion that Jesus was just a recycled Tammuz, the Mesopotamian figure that I mentioned, was investigated by contemporary scholars and determined to be utterly false. So I guess they just, thought, whatever. I don't know if scholars actually think like that. Hello, everybody else. So it's only more recently, I guess the advent of the internet is a blessing and a curse. More of a blessing, I would suggest. But it's recently that the assertions have resurrected themselves. Like most heresies, I mean, these aren't technically heresies, but there's nothing much new about heretical thinking. We've been busy over the last couple of thousand years. So almost with a certainty, you can trace any nonsense heresy today back to an original form of it. For example, Jehovah's Witnesses back to Arius, that kind of thing. Yes, so the ease of access to information, the mass distribution facilities for information from unaccountable sources without Joe Rogan popping up, fact checking, etc., has led to the resurrection, no pun intended, of these claims. Let's call them claims and not twaddle. Let's call them claims for a minute. So the next area, I guess, that we need to look at, do these mythological figures, gods with small g's, of ancient times, do they actually mirror the person that we know with certainty and of truth from biblical source, like the Bible actually, is Jesus Christ? Do they really mirror the true Jesus? So an example of a much more modern iteration of these claims is Zeitgeist. It's a film. I don't know if you've heard of it or not, but the claims made within the film Zeitgeist about the Egyptian god Horus are these: that he was born on December 25th. I know that date. Weirdly, our claim is not that Jesus was born on, anyhow, born on December 25th, of a virgin, Isis Mary, apparently, according to Zeitgeist and their scriptwriters. A star in the east proclaimed his arrival. 3 kings came to adore the newborn saviour. He became a child prodigy, teaching at age 12. At 30, he was baptized, in inverted commas, and began a ministry, also in inverted commas. Horus had 12 disciples. I'm just going to do the bunny ears from here. Horus was betrayed. He was crucified, allegedly. He was buried for 3 days. I mean, like, on the surface, it's like, wow, I know a guy this exact same thing happened to. And was resurrected after 3 days. However, like, I don't want to burst anyone's bubble regarding fiction, but the actual writings and source materials regarding Horus have been to this day competently examined, re-examined, and this is the actual. These are the actual findings. Horus was born to Isis, not the Islamic State in Syria organization, but the Egyptian goddess. But there's no mention in historical sources or archaeological sources, etc., of her being called Mary at all, one bit, full stop. So that's made up. Also, Mary is an anglicized form of her real name of Miriam. So Mary, wasn't even used in the original text of the Bible. So to claim that, do you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't make sense to say that the Bible copied with a different name from the now modernized name that's being inserted into history. That's nonsense. Isis was not a virgin, so the mother of Horus was not a virgin. She was the widow of Osiris. Don't know if you've heard of him. And conceived Horus with Osiris, so had a father, is the nutshell, like the soundbite. Horus was born during the month of Khoiak, maybe, October/November, not December 25th. Like, a lot of these, what's the word, contenders for the originator of the narrative have December 25th for a birthday. I don't know why, because very, very few, I would imagine, Christians claim that his actual date of birth was the 25th of December. There's no mention, like in the Bible, for example, as to his actual birth date. Moving on, like, coming along with Horus, there's no record of 3 kings visiting him at his birth. The Bible never states the actual number anyway of magi that came to see the Christ when he was born. Horus is not a savior in any way, shape or form. Didn't die for anybody, for example. There are no accounts of Horus being a teacher at 12. Like, literally just stacking up nonsense after, baseless claim after baseless claim. He was not baptized, even with the inverted commas, like he just wasn't. The only account of Horus that involves water is one story where he is torn to pieces with Isis, his mother, requesting that the crocodile god fish him out of the water and save him. He didn't have a ministry either, inverted commas or otherwise. He didn't have 12 disciples. Like, you can see where this is going. According to the accounts of Horus, the not verified, that's the incorrect term, the real life ones as opposed to the Hollywood type ones, Horus had 4 demigods that followed him. Like, that's a stretch for disciples, but yet 4 demigods. And there were some indications of 16 human followers and an unknown number of blacksmiths that went into battle with him, which is nice. There's no account of Horus being betrayed by anybody, certainly not a friend. He didn't die by crucifixion. There are various accounts of his death, so it's contested as to how he died, if he lived, if you see what I mean. However, none of them involve crucifixion, which would be wild, like, in and of itself, seeing as how it hadn't been invented yet. There's no account of him being buried for 3 days. Wasn't resurrected. No account of him coming out of the grave with the body that he went in with. And some accounts have Horus / Osiris at this point now being brought back to life by Isis and then becoming Lord of the Underworld, taking over Hades, as it were, depending on what they call it, potentially the underworld. When you stick those side by side on a piece of paper, to say there is little, if any, resemblance is like potentially an overstatement of the affairs. Like, it's just almost straight down the line. Like, you know, potentially I've gone out with 16 people before. Like, it just, do you know what I mean? I have no disciples. So, yeah. That's that out of the way. That's Horus done and dusted. So Jesus now is also compared to, or wrongly claimed to be imitating in the narrative, Mithras, by those who assert that Jesus is a myth himself. So all of the above descriptions that I gave of, or preceding even, descriptions of Horus are applied to Mithras. Again, it's almost like sloppy writing at this stage. So, born of a virgin, being crucified, rising in 3 days, yada, 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 yada. So now we turn to the Mithras myth, as it were, to find out what the myth actually says. He was born out of a solid rock. It's pretty difficult to think of a less Virgin Mary type mother arrangement than a lump of solid rock. Not a woman at all, in fact. I guess rocks are technically virgins, but I don't really want to get into that conversation. So he firstly, I mean, he's quite big in the game in terms of myths. He battled first with the sun, you know, the big hot fiery thing in the sky. Well, English people, use your imagination. And then with a primeval bull. Sounds a bit Zeusy, but it's not. Thought to be the first act of creation. I do have I had an inordinate amount of time for mythology, like when I was younger, and I can just see the shape of that story. Like, there's some wild goings on in people's imaginations. Mithras killed the bull. The bull then became the ground of life for the human race. No extra deets at this time. But if anyone knows the story of Aphrodite and how she came about, use your imagination. Mithras' birth was celebrated on December 25th, along with winter solstice. So we've got something at least. There is no mention of his being a great teacher. There's no mention of Mithras having 12 disciples. The idea of him having 12 disciples may have come from a mural in which he's surrounded by the 12 signs of the zodiac, like astronomy type stuff. Astrology. I do apologize to any astronomers. Mithras had no bodily resurrection. When he completed his earthly mission, he was taken to paradise in a chariot. He was still alive and kicking at the time. I don't know if he kicked, I just made that bit up, but he was still alive, as alive as a myth can be. when he ascended, as it were, or when he got a lift. What else? Tertullian, you've heard of him. He's an early Christian writer. He did write about Mithraic cultists, so people who followed this, like pagan, this cult, reenacting resurrection scenes. However, this obviously occurred well after the New Testament was in existence for Tertullian to be like observing these things. So if any plagiarism was being done at that time, we can like just posit that claim back at the door of the cultists. More examples of like pagan myths and demigods, etc., could be given of Krishna, Attis, Dionysus, and other mythological small g gods. However, take my word for it, but I mean, I do have a little flashcard thingy that I guess I could share somewhere. It's all the same results. It's just like a nope, 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 and a big fat nope. Ultimately, our historical Jesus, as portrayed in the Bible, is unique in terms of like circumstances and his mother and his death, resurrection, his birthday, etc. The alleged similarities, if we're going to charitably call what's going on here, with his story and the pagan myths are so greatly exaggerated that it becomes, to a suspicious mind like mine, it just looks like, foul play, as it were, is afoot. Let's think. Whilst the tales of Mithras, Horus, and the others go before, they predate Christianity, that's a definite. There is minuscule, like there's very little historical attestation or records of the actual beliefs of those cults and religions. The vast majority of the earliest writings on those religions date from around the 3rd and the 4th century after Christ. So that goes some way also to dismissing who copied who, as it were. To assume that the pre-Christian beliefs of the cults that have no written record anywho were identical to post-Christian beliefs is, like, at best a bit silly. A more logical approach would be to attribute any, potentially all similarities, not all of them, between those religions as the other way around, as Christianity coming around and being copied, as it were, or plagiarized, especially the teachings. So now we come on to the next logical fallacies. Let's have a look at those, and we're going to look at the logical fallacies committed whilst making these claims by opponents of Christianity, or people who assert that Jesus was a myth, or at least those that claim he borrowed from the mystery religions. So 2 fallacies, the false cause and the terminological fallacy. It's not as complicated as it sounds. So if one thing comes before another thing, if one thing precedes the other, you can be mistaken to assert that one has caused the other, as it were. So causative, one asserts that potentially this thing happened first, so maybe it caused the other thing. And this is the fallacy of the false cause. So an example is if, roosters may very well crow before the sun rises every morning, wherever they are. They're not near me. They may do that. That doesn't mean in any way, shape or form that they cause the sun to rise by crowing, if you see what I mean. So, prior to the accounts, pre-Christianized accounts of mythological gods, where we do find them, they don't, we know that there aren't enough to back up any claims, even if they did, even if they showed a close resemblance, such as it was, and they don't, it doesn't mean that they caused the gospel writers to invent a false Jesus. it doesn't make sense. It's like attributing like science fiction as the cause, like, I don't know, 1950s science fiction show to a 1970s rocket launch or something, like in real life, as it were. So the terminological fallacy, this happens when words are redefined in order solely to prove a point. So you remember the film I mentioned, Zeitgeist, that says Horus began his ministry. That's the claim in the film. The word ministry is here being redefined. Horus had no actual ministry at all, like nothing like the ministry that we know Christ had, but we can attribute to him, as it were, in terms of what the word means. Those who claim a link between Mithras and Christ, when talking about a baptism that initiated the potential cult members into the cult of Mithras, need to look at their definition of baptism. Mithraic priests would put the initiates, as it were, into a pit, suspend a ball. They love a ball over the pit, far out, and then slit the bull's stomach, like some 1980s gunk show, like Saturday morning kids thing. And then obviously the initiate would just be covered in entrails, innards, blood, gore, nastiness, that kind of thing. I would, like, it's not a hill I'm going to die on, but I would confidently assert that is nothing like my baptism. Like, even though mine was that long ago, I don't actually remember the initial one. So, yeah, come on. Like, it's a stretch of the word. It's a terminological fallacy to just make up a new meaning for the word, like, because you're desperate to try and have a causative link. Because, I mean, Christian baptism, when we think of it, is either being submerged fully or partially in water to symbolize the death of Christ, and then re-emerging or coming out of the ceremony even, you know, and therefore symbolizing rising again to life with him, the resurrection. People who claim that Christ is mythological, deceptively or inadvertently, because they're just parroting it from others, use the same term, baptism, to describe the two rites, the two things that I just outlined, in hopes of making a connection, which, if you look into it, just scratch past the surface, obviously you know that standing under a ball who's just been gutted is not very much like being dipped in the water at all, one bit. And now we're sailing on now to the truthfulness of the New Testament account. And you've heard me say it before, but no other manuscript evidence or written work has been been pored over and scrutinized as thoroughly as the Bible. Like, that's a fact, but we're looking at the New Testament. And no other work of antiquity, written work of antiquity, has more evidence to its historical veracity than the New Testament. So those are both reassuring facts. The New Testament has more writers, I guess, than the myths, at 9 better writers. Paul, love that guy. Earlier writers than any other existing document from that era. History itself testifies that the writers went to their deaths never having rescinded their claim to have seen Christ, raised from the dead. None of them recanted, even under horrific torture. None of them. I mean, all of them went to pretty distressing deaths, other than John. However, none of them recanted. And it's been said many, many times, but, to die for a life, you can falsely claim something, you can bang a drum for it, you can go around knocking on people's doors, like getting on their nerves, whatever. To actually die for something you fully know is nonsense is very, it would be very psychologically unusual, unless the person was suffering a delusion whereby they did not think it was false, if you see what I mean. You know, think of it. If you were threatened to be nailed up on a cross, and all you had to do to save yourself was say, "Nah, not really, bro." Like, do you know what I mean? Like, something powerful, obviously the Holy Spirit, whatever, compelled them to stick to the gospel and the truth, because to die in Him is to live, as it were. Coming around to the end of like this section, as it were. So history has shown that it takes at least like 50-ish years, 2 generations before a myth can enter an historical account. Because as long as there are eyewitnesses, and of course life expectancy was, well, not, I won't say biblical times because some of it was really high, but at the time of the New Testament being compiled, life expectancy was shorter, certainly for the gospel writers. But yeah, so it takes some time. You can't have eyewitnesses milling around going, nah, it never happened, or whatever. When you're trying to get a myth into an historical account, you can't have these pesky eyewitnesses around at the time and still alive, because errors can be refuted, and, you know, like the establishment of mythology can be exposed as twaddle. So all the gospels were written during the lifetime of the eyewitnesses. There were many eyewitnesses to the resurrection. Some of Paul's letters were as early as AD 50, which is 17 years after Jesus, as it were. And the thing is, with Paul's letters, he's already speaking to people who have either seen or believe as he believes. Contemporary eyewitnesses, like, he appeals to them in 1 Corinthians 15:6 to verify his testimony. So you wouldn't ask, you know what I mean? Like, you wouldn't ask somebody who knew you were talking nonsense to verify on your behalf. The New Testament claims and attests to the fact that within the century in which Christ lived and died, he wasn't mistaken for any other god, if you see what I mean. Or Jews were picking up stones left, right, and centre, but no other cults were getting involved, going, "Oh, you claiming to be Horus?" Like, it just didn't happen. When Paul got to Greece, when he preached in Athens, the big thinkers, as it were, of the city said he seems to be a proclaimer of strange deities, because he was preaching Christ and the resurrection. And they took him and brought him to Areopagus, saying, "May we know what this new teaching is which you are proclaiming, for you are bringing some strange things to our ears. So we want to know what these things mean." They liked thinking about stuff and debating stuff, as opposed to stoning people to death. And sorry, not that bit, but the preceding bit that I just said is Acts 17:18-20. So if Paul was just like digging up stories of Horus and Mithras, etc., the Athenians, for one, would have known. Like, they would have gone, because they liked discussing these things. They would have had some clue that it was just rehashed, recycled stuff, because they say this is some new and strange teaching, meaning it hasn't reached them yet. And if like from the nature religions, like, or cults, if dying and rising gods were like so 10 a penny in the first century, you know, why, when Paul preached Jesus being risen from the dead, did the Epicureans and the Stoics not just say, "Oh, what, you mean like Mithras and that Horus?" Like, no one said, "Oh, do you mean like that?" Nothing. No recognition of this claimed plagiarism. Wrapping all that up, I'd like to, for non-Christians, even none of that, like, apart from my stuff from the New Testament, just the logical fallacies and the fact that these claimed similarities don't exist, doesn't mean that Christ did exist, if you see what I mean. It's not a direct refutation of the claim that Christ is mythological. It's a refutation of the claim that his mythology is just lifted from other pagan sources. And the claim that Christ is just a copy originated, like I said initially, with authors like German theological works of the 1800s who were and have been since then discounted by academia. Obviously, we don't look to academia for validation of like of our faith, but that's the case. They've been dismissed by everyone except like certain websites, or like they just come around in emails or wherever you end up seeing these pictures, mostly with the little nonsense information next to them. They also contain the logical fallacies that I outlined, and they don't compare one tiny bit to the Gospels, which are beautiful. Also, the New Testament has been scrutinized above and beyond, what's actually necessary or what's been the scrutiny given to other religious texts, and that's 2,000 years worth of intense scrutiny. And they've stood up to the test of time. The parallels or the alleged parallelism between these other small g gods and Christ literally evaporates in front of your eyes once you just have a look. And even the Jesus is a myth theory, if we can call it that, relies on very selective descriptors, having words redefined, as I said, false assumptions, logical fallacies, sensationalism, ill intent, one could claim. Christ is, actually, now I think of it, I should have lined it up, but I may do another one on it as a follow-up. I may not, because I haven't got a pen with me to write it down. But I remember Lewis speaking about the dying God rising again at some length, and Lewis is he's just a don, as it were. So I'll try and dig up his assessment of it, because he wasn't refuting the claim. Well, I guess in a roundabout way he was. But yeah, he had some other thoughts on why it would be insignificant. I don't want to spoil it, but basically he says that it wouldn't matter because Christ is, there could well be echoes of such a real reality, as it were, of Christ, that because, of course, we see there are no written records of these predating cults, but they come around once the New Testament was being, circulated widely. So, yeah, something so real would have echoes. You don't want to copy a fake banknote. You want to copy the original, as it were. Christ is unique, like we know that. Come on. I don't even feel like I need to have over the point. He says, "Who do you say I am?" When the answer's given, you are Christ, the Son of God, or you are the Christ. So, he says, that answer was not given to you, but that's not from men, it's of God. We know he's not a fibber, as it were. So, what more do you want, really? Apart from me to come back to the live chat. So, that's what I just did. I just got rid of the notes that are in front of me. Questions, comments, kicking and screaming, anything? I don't know. I haven't been following. Hello to everybody else who's here also, by the way. You're right. If you have any questions, that would be great. If you don't, I'm not going to cry myself to sleep or anything. I'm just going to get on pretending to do my homework and not doing it. But yeah, I'll give it 10 seconds whilst the live chat catches up with everything. And just read a little bit of the proceeding. Yeah. Bunglebeat TV is just pointing out the precision of the Bible sets it apart, and there is a vagueness and there are the roots of a lot of the mythology. They're known as mythologies, that's enough. They're myths. So yeah, what are my thoughts about the Antichrist? Do you want to be a little teensy bit more specific, because it's a pretty big question? There's a dark triunity and a trinity made up of the false prophet, the Antichrist, and Satan. I think he'll be fatally wounded, if I'm not mistaken. It's portrayed in Revelation. Or probably not a good guy. Like, I don't know in respect of what, if you want to like rephrase that a little bit. Yeah. Phil, I'm sure that's hilarious, but I don't know what your answer is. But yeah. It depends what the situation is, open secrets, as to whether kicking and screaming is appropriate. I mean, it goes to place, doesn't it? Obviously, you remember Dan Brown, the Da Vinci Code. He said nothing in Christianity is original, that kind of like, whatevs, Dan. That kind of stuff. Although it was a good book as it went. That's the problem with mythologies or fiction. When they are wrapped up with truths in them or things that are real, i.e. the church or something like that, it can be detrimental because it just gets sort of swallowed up into the available information, as it were, and people can be misled that way. Any questions? Basil gets said not much in Dan Brown was original. None of the words. I don't think he coined a single. I don't think he made up any linguistic, like nothing. All of his letters had been used before. We can safely assume that. Yes, Murray SW. Yeah, like write fiction and then claim it to be research after the fact. And it gets you more books sold, I guess, and more money for certain like church tours and stuff. Magnetism is saying if Judaism hadn't been corrupted, there was no need for Christ's ministry. I can see like your line of thinking. Christ is the lamb slain from the foundation of the world. So God already foresaw all of it. You see what I mean? Like before even the first sin was committed, Christ was already slain to atone. So, yeah. Like, yeah, God knew already. Well, not already because he's outside of time, but God knew. Is that right? Made him, okay. Sorry, I was just looking. I don't know who calls the 3rd century the 300s when they're the 200s, but I'm imagining you mean Dan Brown. Sunny. Okay. Is there any contemporary source for Christ's existence? Contemporary to Christ, I hope, like, yeah. Many atheists agree Jesus existed, but do you have a contemporary source? Contemporary is like kind of subjective. I don't know about that week. Josephus, I think, is potentially within the same 200 to 300 years, if I'm not mistaken. There were, okay, yeah. So within the Roman governors, I think they were minuted some of their meetings, etc. And I can't think where I can find them. I could find them actually if you remind me. Comment, Moriel. Yeah, I think I have a transcript of. Don't know if it's Pontius Pilate, but yeah, that's contemporary, i.e., non-biblical, not included within the canon. There were playwrights at the time, or satirists more correctly, taking the mick, like performing plays, mocking people who thought they saw a dead guy, get up, walk around, cook fish for people's breakfast, etc. Not sure that do you know what I do? I have gosh, I'd love to know. I've got so many like documents, and this computer's on its last legs, like bless it. So I have to get everything off and saved. But yes, I have physical descriptions by contemporaries as to Christ's appearance. You do need an existence to have an appearance, as it were. Yeah, I'll comment warrior. If you don't mind, stick it in the comment section, seeing as how you're a warrior in that area. If you put a link in, it will go straight to my held for review, but then I'm less likely to scoot past it, just to remind me. And I'll see in between real life stuff and a lot of homework that I am and other like pressing issues that I've got going on in my personal life, I will get around to it. So yeah. I can put links in, in the community. Yes, of course I can. But you have to remind me again, because I'm saying yes, and then I'll watch this video maybe in like 6 months' time, and I'll go, oh, shizzle, or something to that effect if no one else is listening. Okay, so yeah, if you remind me, I'm happy to search through 2 computers and a small library and yada yada. And I can ask my theology professor as well. And that's a better idea. Okay. Magnetism. This is the thing with so magnetism is saying there's a similarity between the 10 Commandments and the Egyptian negative confessions. If that is the case, this is the thing, like that's your claim or the claim of somebody else that you're letting us know about. So you have to bring the evidence. I don't know those negative confessions. And the thing is, common sense, like the point is it's supposed to be common. Like, I guess if there are, I'm going to dig out that Lewis piece because it much better explains why it doesn't negate it. Even if, like, let's think of it this way. Let's think how to word it. If, for example, if Horus had been born on the 25th, if his mother was a virgin, if he was, resurrected. So let's think. If they really did have a very similar life or account in their birth, death, and resurrection, at least, would this disprove the gospel accounts of Christ, like as a logical, like a thought exercise? And the answer is actually no, because we determine historical accuracy or the historical accuracy of certain events based on evidence, not on uniqueness, not on it being the sole instance of those combined circumstances happening in the life of one person, if that makes sense. So I don't believe that we demand that they be utterly unique in order to consider things true, like circumstances. So that's one. Greg, I hate mispronouncing his name, the writer of Tactics, Gregory, Koukl. Koukl. This is one of his like examples of what I just said. So he says, do you know there's a book that was written around the turn of the last century about, I don't know when he wrote this, about a ship that was an unsinkable ship. This unsinkable ship hit an iceberg on its maiden voyage and it sank. The name of the ship was Titan. And 15 years after that book, the Titanic made its maiden voyage, as you may remember reading about, and sank after hitting an iceberg. And that's, if you'd read the novel first, if you were that old, and then heard that a ship called the Titanic had sunk, I doubt that you would be looking at photographs and eyewitness accounts in the newspaper going, no, it can't. You may be going, oh my gosh, what a coincidence. I can't believe that sort of thing. It doesn't, you wouldn't necessarily logically jump to that didn't happen because somebody made a remarkable work of fiction that almost mimicked entirely the truth. That does happen. It would be a silly thing to do to reject it outright just because you'd read a book that claimed, a similar story. Whether or not the Titanic sank is determined on the wreckage of the Titanic, the passenger lists, the maiden voyage being potentially filmed or recorded in the you know what I mean? That's the thing we go to assess the veracity of that. So that's my answer to that. And that's Greg Koukl, if that's his name. I'm so sorry if he ever watches me butchering his surname. They do hit icebergs, boats and ships. I don't know if a boat would be out that far, but yeah, ships. Anywho, Armour of God is saying that J.P. Morgan, I'm guessing that's the author of that book, got the idea of Titanic from the book. Oh no, because it can't be. Many on that ship were against the Federal Reserve. All right, so then we're going to go into whether it was sunk or whether it sank, as it were. Either way, because I do love a little theory, we're still not going to say it didn't happen. It must be a myth because there was a fiction. I mean, if we want to go full suspicious and cynical, we could say that people are hiding in plain sight, writing out their plans to kill a load of people who have got a part in some Kabbalistic, or cabal, some Federal Reserve nonsense, like not nonsense, you know what I mean? We could say they just wrote it, stuck it out there like the 201 event with COVID, and then went, wow, like what? That sort of thing. I mean, we could say that. Have a nice day, Bill, you little time traveler. Martin Helen, I can't get to the tinfoil's in the kitchen, I'm afraid. Don't really feel like wearing a hat at the moment. Oh, I was about to read out Open Secrets, but she's speaking with somebody else. Okay, now we've moved fully on to the Titanic. Shall I read it? All right. Marius WE says there's a discrepancy. Some say the Titanic was like severed, like in half. Some say it wasn't or it didn't, so it couldn't have sunk. In fact, the Titanic didn't exist. This is where I take off my tinfoil hat, my invisible one, and just rest it. Everything's my fault. Oh my God, you may have some poor weather in your area at the moment, potentially. That's me. Financial, economic crisis, anyone? This guy. No, it's not my fault. Free speech, absolute is, but it's my stream, so I just won't read the nutty ones. I'm only joking. How do I respond when Muslims talk about the Dark Ages? Lol, I say, you ain't even left yet. No, I'm joking. They never have spoken to me about the Dark Ages. If you mean like, I don't know, what do you mean by that? Like, no, they've never put it in that phrase, or that nomenclature, if we want to all get excited about a word. Okay, anyhow, if there are any questions, because I just got sidetracked by my own sidetrack, then I'm happy to answer them. Is that for me, Baz? Please don't let that be for me. Or are you talking to Open Secrets? Do you want to just tell me? I know I look excited. But don't worry if it's for someone else. When I say any questions, I know technically that means any questions, but usually like vaguely related to the topic. Okay, Baz. All right, so Bumblebee, that's a name and off. Do I think UFOs are demonic? I can safely assert I have never up until this point even said the words out loud or thought it. I did spend a lot of time with a friend of mine is very interested in Rendlesham Forest, for example, an area 51 and yada yada. There are some pretty compelling accounts, actually. There are some military accounts when people are like over on their deathbed, or can't remember his name, Colonel Philip, can't remember. I don't think I ever thought of it as satanic. I thought of, like, to me, I feel like I've adequately looked at the, I don't discount the potentiality, but it wouldn't affect my faith. It, like it just be, I guess the Safe answer would be that, like, God, we know about God's creation here, and we know about God's creation of the universe. We don't know if, after he created us, he may have gone elsewhere, but I don't, me personally, not so much. But I'm happy to read again. You know what I mean? Like, I did my little stint with that. I like mythology, like I said, as well. So yeah, no, I never thought it was demonic. I'm not saying that alleged abductions and stuff couldn't be heavily sinister and very negatively affect the people involved. So yeah, I mean, the absence of of Christ, I guess, or of salvation. I mean, no, I don't know if I'm. Hold on, I haven't finished my sentence and I'm already arguing with myself. Or let me speak out loud because you're not all listening to my brain. I was going to say the absence of Christ may make one more open to demonic attack, but then my own experience of just coming to salvation is enough to tip off Satan, and he's like, hold on a minute, let's have another little all-out assault. So, okay, armor of God. I don't know if he's trolling at this point. I will find out, and there will be questions asked later. Is saying aliens are interdimensional, not interstellar. Okay, I don't know where you all want me to go with it. Do I think we are living in end times? Comment warrior. I think psychologically it's very understandable when people attribute events of their own, their own lifetime to the Bible, like an end time. So I can utterly empathize with people potentially after, the Spanish flu or any of the world wars in believing, looking around at the devastation and not rightfully, but justifiably, envisioning the end of the world as coming soon to High Street and everywhere near you. I must admit that I'm not utterly convinced it isn't, but what I will say, I was saying it to somebody, like a loved one, even if it's not end times per se, it's still, I don't know how old you are, the viewer, but it's still our end times anyway. Anyone of my generation at least hasn't got another 60 years. Even if you have another, even if say you're 30 years old, you may confidently, your family may have long lives and stuff like that. You may think, yeah, I'll make it to 90 years old. That's 60 years away. For the last 10 minimum years, you're going to be well old, as it were. Saying that, Billy's walking around quite sprightly at Speaker's Corner, but he's still very much a 90-year-old gentleman with those considerations as to when he may go skydiving or rock climbing. Do you know what I mean? Just cups of tea and biscuits and people being charming to you, I guess, if you're lucky at that age. So yeah, whether these are apocalyptic times, we should still be living as if they are, because the end of our life, nobody's promised any, the 3 score and 10, but no individual is promised any exit date. You know what I mean? By God, God knows it, but you're not given that info necessarily. So you should live as if each day really matters, because at a minimum, 150,000 people die every day. Those are pre-COVID stats, whether you believe all that, whatever. The thing is that many people, I would confidently assert that other than terminally ill or people being euthanized at their own request, maybe at Dignitas, or very few of those 150,000 every 24 hours wake up that morning knowing that this is their last day. And I wonder, would they live it differently? I don't mean not get killed or whatever or not die, but yeah, would they have lived differently in the preceding years if they'd known, this is my end date, it's going to be Tuesday, the something of something. So if, the commission is the most important thing, Christian, that we have to do. We're not asked much. For the massive, like a touch. I don't know how to put it in non-London. The reward, the salvation and the grace and the mercy that we have received is priceless in real terms. There is no price. There is no price. There's nothing we can do to earn it. It is priceless anyway. So we should be like as committed to the commission as we can. Like within our own lives, there are decisions that would be affected as to whether we are fully convinced that we ought to make the best of every single day. Like, don't get me wrong, I'm not levitating around or anything. I'm like fully procrastinating my uni assignment at the moment. You know, but in terms of doing good stuff for Jesus, let's put it like in base level terms, like I'm up for it. I just can't stand the thought. Like I've woken up in the night before, like just in a sweat, thinking, can't stand the thought of kneeling on Judgment Day and trying to explain why I just couldn't be bothered. Like, I didn't want to talk to that guy because whatever. Like, and then fully maybe coming to the realization that the person that you just didn't have time to give a few more minutes or whatever, or you felt embarrassed to bring up Jesus, they may at that point be in hell. So I don't know, I went off on a bit of a thingy there, but make the most of your time, like laugh a lot, love. If you're blessed with that fruit of the Spirit, then just do it. Like stop thinking about it. Just, love is of the Holy Spirit. If you're doing it, it's not you anyway. Like get out of the way and let God get on with it and try and, I guess, like exemplify, like it's that thing of we might be the only living Bible, at least, someone comes into contact with ever. And the thing about representing Christ, I'm not talking about being sinless or changing water into wine, although I have looked for that, the instructions. They're just not in the modern Bible, that's for sure. But I'm only joking, obviously. I mean, I have looked. But either way, when we let's put our personal lives, as it were, aside, when we're ministering or when we're speaking about with authority and with information that could be the difference between someone's salvation and damnation, at that point best efforts should be made to get out of the way and let the Holy Spirit fill us and give us the words to say and represent Christ in an appropriate fashion. Because like I say, like if someone sends out I don't know, a runner or an ambassador or someone else to come out and meet you and shake your hand and tell you about the organization you're going for an interview, whatever it is, if they're really sloppy and on their phone and whatever, like you're going to think, oh, this organization seems a bit like a bit slack. I mean, they've employed that, you know what I mean? Like you're the representative, like we are. I can't think, Colossians, is it? I don't know. It's all over the place. Like we need to not even try, because they're fruits of the Spirit, but we have to do whatever we do to manifest the peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, self-control, joy, love, and faith in order to invite with attractiveness. Is that where I don't mean like looks? I mean like we need to show the full attraction of salvation, if that makes sense. Don't know what the question was now. I've just gone off on one. She's gone, mate. She's just waffling. But I hope that made some sense to someone or all of you. Anywho, can we lose our salvation? Yes. That's my answer, Your Highness. Galatians 5:4, Hebrews 6:4-6. There are other verses. It's not about lose as in being snatched away from the Lord. Nobody can snatch us away. However, if you look to the verses that I just referenced, you'll see it speaks of, having once tasted of the Holy Spirit or the goodness and then fallen away, or being severed from Christ, who will avail you nothing. Like speaking to Christians, saying, if you do this thing, if you try and circumvent God's approved method, like Jesus says, I'm the only way. If you try and do something else to please God salvifically, it says you will be alienated or severed, depending on your translation, from Christ, and he will not help you, or he will avail you nothing. So that to me sounds like you were saved and now you're not. Bob's your uncle, sort of thing. Oh my God, I just did, yeah. 1 minute you're saved, then you're not. But it's that you can't be removed from salvation. You can only voluntarily do the thing. You can walk away, as it were. And then once saved, always saved, people will say, oh, you weren't saved anyway. If that's the case, why were you partaking in the Holy Spirit, like in Hebrews? Yeah, magnetism is bringing up Judas Iscariot, that Judas, who, how come he was there? He did signs and wonders, and he had the full like ministry of Christ going on. And I used to feel like, when I was a child, I felt quite saddened for Cain, for example. I always had a sympathy. Like I thought, oh, he's like 25% of the world's population. He's never seen anyone get hit on the head with a stone before. He's never seen anyone die. He doesn't know what murder is. Like I felt a bit sorry for him. Judas also, I was like, oh no, it's been foretold. And then he's the guy. And then it's like, he can't get out. Like, you know what I mean? Like I thought it in more of a predestined 6-year-old girl way. But then I guess I've come to the realization that it was foretold he would be portrayed. It didn't have to be Judas. I don't mean to say it could have been any of the other 11, but I mean it didn't have to. Judas didn't have to grow up into that destiny. There are certain points within the gospel, and we know they were written afterwards because there's a bit of a snide tone sometimes when they're talking about him. But he had a love of money. We see he put that above, his like he could have confessed. I'm confident he could have confessed his sins to his brothers and got back on the right track, and Christ would have been betrayed elsewhere, as it were. But yeah, no, it doesn't. Magnetism, foretold and free will don't contradict each other. God is outside of time, so as humans we use the imperfect language of, like, if something's foretold, just like the book about the Titan, I don't know, the builders of the Titanic still had the free will to do it. It's more okay, my view, like Arminianism with regard to predestination, this is the Arminian viewpoint. This is the viewpoint that is not hard predestinationism or predeterminism, I guess, in scientific terms. Is this? I did a whole video on soft determinism, but in terms of theological determinism and predestination, God is outside of time. He's not rigging the game. He's not Allah. He's not predestining some people to heaven and therefore by default predestining some people to hell. Our God, like, no, just no. What I believe, and like anyone who holds to this position believes, is that God knows the end results of our free will. He is in all places at all times. He is in yesterday and he is in tomorrow. There's nowhere small enough that he isn't, and there's nowhere too big that he isn't. And those, I think if you look at my videos on the attributes of God, infinity, and can't remember the other one that I covered in that video, he is all through time simultaneously. When 100,000 people pray at the same time, he has an infinite amount of time to listen to each individual prayer. It's not like human ears. He's not hearing a big cacophony of noise and trying to pick out. Like, he has all the time. He's outside of time. He's all knowing. And therefore he knows the results of our free will and is able to, at the beginning of time, so to speak, write our names in the Lamb's book, because he knows the outcome. He hasn't rigged the game. He just knows the end result. Oh, it's Philip's here. Hi, Philip. Why do I think that some people believe you cannot lose salvation? Because of their interpretation of certain Bible verses. I think one of the ones about for Christ will finish in you the good works that have been started, stuff like that. And I think it's also like a misjoining of that you can't be taken away from God by Satan, by somebody else, as it were. You can't be snatched from the Father's hands. Everyone who has been given to Christ will come. Yeah, I have had lengthy debates about it in the past, but I find that that person who held that opinion very strongly and passionately just became more and more kind of irritated, and not ad hominem, but yeah, was a little bit kind of different towards me when they realized I held those views. So, but I have gone through it a lot. I just don't, I mean, I can believe I do believe all of the Bible. So we have to reconcile them as opposed to there being any error or contradiction. And we're not talking like Quran claim contradiction. But yeah, I see that the verses, the two that I referenced, and there are others, are explicit. They are talking to Christian Gentiles, one of them saying, if you go and get circumcised as an attempt to keep the law, you are now indebted to the entirety of the law. And the same writer goes on at a different part to say, by making a new covenant, God renders the first one old, like the old covenant. And what is old will soon, become obsolete, will decay. So we're not under that covenant. And therefore, if you go and get circumcised, I'm never going to do it, but that's just my personal choice. And I'm all on. But yeah, if you go and try to uphold the law, you can, as a Christian, if you like, not dishonor your parents. That'd be lovely. Don't covet your neighbour's oxes, just for fun. You can do the things that the old laws outline, but this is the key element. So it's the intention of your heart, because Yahweh searches the heart and the mind. Imagine him searching around in my sorry. If you do them to try to circumvent Christ's sacrifice and try and get there on your own merits, as it were, which is a fool's errand, let me tell you, not only will you fail, but you will also lose the salvation you have. You'll be severed from Christ. To be joined to Christ is salvation. So that's why I think that, Phillips. Yes, the Gospels do have eyewitness accounts. I'm just going to leave it at yes, because there's just far too much to go through. But again, I can't see. There you go. I can't even remember the first thing I promised you. Oh yeah, eyewitness accounts, wasn't it? But non-biblical eyewitness accounts. I don't want to take on too much. Yes, there are. Let's please leave it at that. But you can trust me, and I will, a very, very later date after my assignment deadline, get on it, as it were, answering. Brilliant, Phillips. I love it when a plan comes together. Canadians. Oh my God. Oh, don't get me started. Don't get me started on Canadians. Totally irrelevant to everyone else apart from some people in the chat. I spoke with the person who I went and stayed with in Canada earlier, like on a video call, and the cutest baby. Sorry, I've gone all girly, but yeah, such a little sweetie. Any more questions? And then how long? Wow, I've been chatting ages. Got stuff to do, calls to take, hair to wash. By the look of me, I just looked in the screen. Oh, Anna Banana, that's nice. Thank you. Okay, Sunny Sparkles, the Bible does say, be quick to invite people into your home. I am paraphrasing to the maximum. No. It says that people who have been don't fail to be hospitable, because by doing so, i.e. not inviting people around and being sociable, I beg you on that. Some people have had encounters with angels, i.e. by letting it, God, I really butchered it. By not being hospitable, you may in fact be not opening the door to an angel, is the K translation. Ben Shapiro. What are my thoughts on Ben Shapiro? Yeah. He's all right. I like it. Yeah, he's an intelligent man. He's got some Like he does have some good observations. I like the fact that he's not like embarrassed of his religiosity, for example. I can't listen to too much of him because of time constraints, but also like he has a way of talking that will begin to grate on me, unfortunately. Like I know some brilliant minds who I can't actually listen to them, but I can read their stuff. And I like Andrew Claven very much so. He works with Ben Shapiro on the Daily Wire, and he is a not former Jew. He's a Jewish person who converted to Christianity, and he's got a really good testimony, and he's a very funny man as well, and he's a very astute political commentator and a brilliant fiction writer. I'm not even getting paid to big him up. Oh yeah, I mean, yeah, you can believe what you like. But they were written by the gospel writers. As a pedant, I can say that. Anyhow, all right then. I guess I'll be jumping off. I'll press the first button really slowly, as it were. Not press the button slowly. That doesn't make a difference. But move my cursor over really slowly to the first button, just to see if anyone else has a final what's name. But if not, you're very welcome, Murray SWE. I don't like it. Thank you very much, James Johnson, and James Johnson's ear, who's always listening. I will take care, as it were. Baz, I think, I mean, I don't disbelieve for a moment the qualifications. I'm all right at maths, as it were, academically, but I think it's a sense of humour issue, which I appreciate anyway. I wouldn't know, Mr. Bad Gamer. No, I don't think that would be an accurate description of my feelings towards trolls. I am, in my own free time, a little bit of a torment, or display affection by being a little bit, I don't know. I do like trolling in its proper time. Like, for example, I do like evidence of trolling, but not bullying or like a meanness. I just like the funny. There's not enough funny in the world. Funny people keep dying as well, which is worrying. Oh, thank you very much, Ricky the Pilgrim. That's lovely. Thanks, Serge. Thank you, Martin. Everyone's like basically trolling me out the door. They're like, all right, bye then, love. See you later. Thanks for the stream. Ciao now. And I'm just still bunnying. But yes, if that's a good idea. I've pressed the first button now. That shows you. But thank you anyway for the niceness. It's nice to be nice. That's what I'm going to end on. Like, imagine, like, in real life, like, it's in all seriousness, as it were, the world is a pretty horrific and dark looking place for like at least 360 million Christians, that's for sure. But also like well publicized events that are going on at the moment. I don't know if Elijah was the first troll, but it's pretty good. I wish there was like a proper like transcript, as it were, like mock for mock. But yeah, that shows that we're all right to use humor in our pursuance of the salvation of others. Where was I? Yes, the world is a pretty I'm not going to swear. It's pretty horrific, and laughter is the best medicine, unless you've got terminal cancer. Then please take the medication or whatever. But also laughing, like I don't know about top 3, but it's one of my very most favorite things to do. People who can make me laugh. I mean, I love them anyway, like if they're loved ones, but it just like seals the deal. I just like laughing. There's enough time to be depressed and like moody and dramatic. Like basically when you're a teenager, I just get over it. On that bombshell, he did. God's got a sense of humour, Your Highness, let me tell you that. I've said a few prayers, and then, like when you're at school and you all get really literal and the teacher will say something, you do it to the letter, even though it's not what they want you to do. It's like a converse of that. I've prayed. Now I give, like I'm like a solicitor. I say my prayers and then I have to go back through it. Like, no, but I don't mean actually like that. Well, I mean, like, it all gets a bit ridiculous. No, I'm not Mr. Bad Gamer, but I have heard of it. But no, I'm on all the places where I am, I'm mainly here and in my house and in Speaker's Corner. And in the hearts of my loved ones. No, I'm only joking there. Like social media type stuff is in the description box. But no, I thought Twitch was just gamey stuff, and I don't. I mean, yeah, I play solitaire, but I don't think that's really a social thing. In fact, I know it's not. Anyway, she's still going on. Just press the button, okay? All right, then. I will chop this video down into the relevant information, i.e. the first third of it, and stick it on the little channel because why not? Why not indeed? That's what I say. And I'm going to do a live stream on SOCO this week. I just said it out loud publicly, so now I will do it. However, when I do, I'll share the link to this channel and my little channel. Thank you, Armour of God. Armour of God is also turning off the lights, locking up the doors, as it were, giving it bye now. Okay. See you all later. Brilliant, Your Highness. I'm so pleased somebody does. It's a very small band of us, as it were, who get my humour. But thank you, Ara. He's such a blessing, that kid. All right. God bless. Lots of love. I'll see you on the flip side. Ciao.